$50 million. That is the number that lives in your head when you picture owning a yacht. A gleaming white hull, a deck the size of a tennis court, a crew in matching polos, and a price tag that quietly tells you this was never meant for someone like you. And here is the thing about that number. It is real. Boats like that exist, and people pay it. But that number is answering a question almost nobody is actually asking. Today, we are going to do the real math, not the brochure math. The honest, line-by-line math that the people who actually spend time on yachts already understand. And by the end, you are going to see that the experience you are picturing costs a tiny fraction of what you think, and that the $50 million version might be one of the worst financial decisions a human being can make. Let me start by separating two things that get tangled together because the entire confusion lies in that tangle. There is the dream and there is the object. The dream is a specific feeling. It is the sun on the water at 4 in the afternoon, the engine cut, somebody handing you a cold drink, the shoreline far enough away that your phone has stopped mattering. That is the dream. The object is a 40-meter fiberglass machine that needs fuel, insurance, a crew, a place to sleep, and constant repair. We have been trained to believe that to get the feeling, you have to buy the machine. You do not. And the gap between those two ideas is the most expensive misunderstanding in luxury. So let us be honest about what the machine actually costs, because the purchase price is the friendliest number you will ever see. In the yacht world, there is a rule of thumb that everyone repeats. It is called the 10% rule. It says that every single year, you should expect to spend about 10% of the purchase price just to keep the thing running. On a $50 million yacht, that is $5 million a year. $5 million gone, whether you set foot on the deck or not. And the people who actually do this for a living will tell you the 10% rule is the optimistic version. The real range today is closer to 10 to 25% once you count everything. And most first-time buyers underestimate the annual budget by 30 to 50%. Where does $5 million a year actually go? Start with the crew because the crew is the single biggest line item, usually 30 to 40% of the entire annual cost. A captain alone runs $80,000 to over $180,000 a year, and on a boat this size, well past $300,000. Then the engineer, the chef, the stewardesses, the deckhands. You are running a small hotel that floats. Then there is the marina. A premium slip can run over $500,000 a year on an annual contract. And a single peak night in a place like Monaco can cost you several $1,000s just to park. Add fuel, insurance, paint, haul-outs, and the endless small repairs that salt water guarantees. And then comes the quietest, cruelest number of all, depreciation. A yacht loses around 10% of its value the first year and roughly 7% a year after that. So your $50 million asset is not just costing you $5 million a year to run. It is also melting underneath you. In the first year alone, that is another $5 million of value simply gone, evaporated with nothing to show for it. Put it together. The running costs and the lost value can quietly erase 8, 9, $10 million in a single 12-month stretch. And here is the part that should stop you cold, because this is where the math turns from expensive into absurd. The average yacht owner uses their boat somewhere between 2 and 4 weeks a year. Let us be generous and call it 3 weeks. So you are paying, let us say, $8 million all in for the year, and you are on the water for 21 days. Do that division. That is over $380,000 per day. Per day. For a boat that sits empty at a dock for 49 weeks out of 52, quietly burning money the entire time it is doing absolutely nothing. You are not paying for a yacht. You are paying for the privilege of owning an enormous, beautiful problem that loses value while it waits for you. That is not a luxury. That is a liability wearing a captain's hat. So here is the secret that the genuinely wealthy understand, and it is the whole point of this video. They do not buy the boat, they buy the day. The richest, most financially literate people on the water are very often not the owners. They are guests, members, and renters who have figured out that ownership is the part you pay for and almost never use. They access the experience and they let someone else carry the liability. They skip straight to the sun and the cold drink, and they leave the crew payroll and the depreciation and the repair bills to somebody who confused the object for the dream. Once you see that, you cannot unsee it. The smart money is not in the hull. It is in the access. So let us build the menu, from the most accessible door all the way up to the most ambitious, with real numbers you can actually check. Because the experience you wanted has a price list, and almost every item on it is shockingly reachable. Route 1 is the cheapest door, and it is the one almost nobody pictures when they think yacht. It is the boat club, or the peer-to-peer rental. A boat club like the well-known national chains will charge you a one-time joining fee of somewhere between $3,000 and $11,000, and then a monthly membership of roughly $130 to $400. For that, you get unlimited access to a fleet of boats with none of the maintenance, none of the storage, none of the cleaning. You just show up, or skip membership entirely and rent peer-to-peer through an app, the way you would book a vacation home. A full day on a real boat through one of these platforms typically runs $200 to $1,200. Let that sink in. The feeling you thought required $50 million is available this weekend for the price of a nice dinner. Route 2 is the charter. This is renting the actual yacht, crew included, for a week. And yes, the experience here is the real thing. The floating hotel with the staff and the itinerary, the exact scene from the brochure. A genuinely impressive 80 to 100-foot yacht charters for somewhere between $50,000 and $120,000 for the week. Smaller but still beautiful boats in the 40 to 60-foot range come in around $15,000 to $30,000 for the week. You add what the industry calls an APA, which is an advance allowance for fuel and food and harbor fees, usually around half the base price on top. So a serious, crude, postcard yacht week lands in the tens of thousands of dollars total. Now watch what happens when you do the thing the owner never can. You split it. Take a beautiful boat at $30,000 for the week. Bring 3 other couples. That is 8 people sharing the cost. And suddenly the exact dream you have been picturing, the crew, the deck, the sun at 4 in the afternoon, costs each of you somewhere around $4,000 to $5,000 for a full week. That is the same as a decent hotel vacation. And here is the difference that should reframe everything. The $50 million owner paid over $300,000 for a single day on that water. You just paid a few thousand for a whole week of the identical experience. And when your week is over, you hand back the keys and you owe nothing. No crew payroll, no depreciation, no repair bill arriving in February. You got the dream and skipped the liability entirely. Route 3 is fractional ownership. And this is for the person who genuinely wants a boat in their life, not just a vacation. Instead of buying the whole yacht, you buy a share of it, a quarter, an eighth, a twelfth, through a managed program. Your share might cost a few $100,000 instead of tens of millions, and your annual cost runs in the range of $150,000 to $400,000 a year, which sounds like a lot until you remember the full ownership version was over $1 million a year for a boat you used a month. For that fraction, you get 6 to 12 weeks of use annually on a professionally managed yacht with 60 to 75% lower cost than owning outright. The crew, the maintenance, the scheduling, all handled. And you can sell your share when you are done. You get the actual ownership feeling, scaled to the amount you will actually use. Now step back and look at what just happened, because this is the part that matters more than the boat. You started at $50 million and a $5 million annual bonfire. And by simply refusing to confuse the dream with the object, you walked that all the way down to a weekend on the water for a few $100s, a crude yacht week for a few thousand per person, or a real ownership stake for a fraction of the price and the headache. The experience barely changed. The bill changed by a factor of thousands, and here is why this matters far beyond boats. This exact pattern, this gap between the dream and the object, is hiding inside almost every expensive thing you have ever told yourself you cannot have. The supercar you think requires $250,000 in the garage, when you can rent the same model for a weekend for the cost of a single car payment, and never touch the insurance or the depreciation. The mansion you can experience as a villa rental for a week, fully staffed, for less than the property taxes the owner pays in a month. The first-class cabin you assumed needs a banker's salary, when it is reachable with points and a little planning. The pattern is always the same. Ownership is the most expensive and least flexible way to access almost any luxury, and the genuinely wealthy know it better than anyone. They are not buying things. They are buying experiences, and they are quietly letting everyone else carry the cost of the object. The person who owns the yacht is often not the richest person on it. They are simply the one who confused the dream with the machine. So that is the mental model I want to leave you with. Access over ownership. Always ask what you actually want, the feeling, the day, the view, and then ask what is the cheapest, most flexible way to buy exactly that and nothing more. Once that question is in your head, you will start seeing the cheaper door standing right next to almost every expensive thing in your life. The $50 million yacht was never really the dream. The sun on the water at 4 in the afternoon, the engine cut, the shoreline far away, that was the dream. And that dream has a price tag a lot closer to a nice weekend than to a super yacht. The only thing standing between most people and a day on the water was the belief that they had to own the whole expensive thing to enjoy the simple version of it. You don't, you never did, and now you know the math. If this changed how you think about one expensive thing you have been telling yourself you can't have, there are a lot more of these, the real math behind the life you actually want. Subscribe, and let's keep decoding it together.